Welcome back to another session on my number one career advice for young and aspiring lawyers. As the founder and inventor, initiator, so to say, of this initiative, it's my great pleasure to welcome you here and to share my number one advice. And this number one advice is throw away passion and build career capital. This is probably the most counterintuitive career advice you've heard in a long time. But let me explain to you why it's the best advice I ever got and why I strongly believe that you should follow it. Now, before doing that, I have to make a disclaimer. This advice is not something that I came up with originally. It wasn't my own original thought. It's based on Professor Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. Now, throw away passion and build career capital is intentionally a bit of a dramatic way of expressing things. After all, this is supposed to be catchy and a sexy title. The main argument here is twofold. One, you should not follow your passion. And B, instead of following your passion, you should much rather build career capital, which means you become very, very good at what you do. You become an expert. You build certain qualities, proficiencies, which help you in your career and which ultimately, there are two possibilities, either allow you to do pretty much what you want to do or on your current job, give you a much better leverage at what you do. Now, let me explain that. As I said before, the advice, follow your passion, is probably the most common career advice you get. Steve Jobs, in his famous commencement speech in 2005, said, "We should love what we do." He said, "Love what you do." And it's quite interesting that Steve Jobs said that, because when you look at Steve Jobs' career, he did not actually follow his own advice. His passion back then was Buddhism. He didn't follow that. If he had truly believed in his advice, and if he had truly followed his advice, he would have likely become a Zen teacher in a Buddhist monastery. According to Professor Newport, and it's the same for my observation as well, what a big problem with the advice, follow your passion, is that very, very often, we do not even know what our passion is. Now, that's again very counterintuitive. And I hear you think or say, I know exactly what my passion is because I studied this and that at university and I truly loved it. And I hear you, I fully understand. But do you truly know what working in that field is like? Can you truly know what working as a corporate lawyer is like if all you have done so far is taken a few classes at university and probably done one or two internships? You don't really know what it's like. Everything you do at university is great. It all matters and it's all relevant for you to learn more. But ask yourself that question once again. Do you really know what it is like to work as an arbitration lawyer just because you have done a moot court competition? If you follow the advice, follow your passion, what is likely going to happen is that you will very quickly change jobs. You will very quickly change directions if there is something that you find more interesting, something else. Now, I must admit that I have myself changed jobs very often. Whenever there was a new, which I considered better opportunity, I would often change. But for major parts of my career, it was always in the same field, and it was always with one goal in mind, which was to build career capital. Now, let me explain that. When you build career capital, you acquire certain capabilities. You build proficiencies, qualities in a specific field. And usually it's only after you have been exposed to a specific field long enough that you start to truly understand what it really is. It is only at this point that you will fully appreciate everything in all its facets. And it's only at this point that you can truly say whether you like something or whether you do not like something. If you follow the advice, follow your passion, you will not even get there, because before you get there, you have already found something else that's much more interesting. Now comes the career capital building process. If you continue to build your capabilities in a specific field, you will become better and better over time. I think we all agree on that. That's just obvious. So if in addition to what you do at your job, you make it a habit to learn more especially in those areas which are important to your job, in your job, you will become better and better. This will ultimately lead you to understanding your overall field much, much better and identifying a lot more opportunities and possibilities than you thought of when you just followed your passion. And number two, in addition to that, it allows you to have more career leverage. Better employees are much harder to get laid off. Better employees can usually have a much larger say when it comes to their assignments, and there are numerous more reasons. And the top of that goal, the end of the journey, so to say, should be that eventually you reach a point where you can self-determine what happens. You can build your own company, you become a partner, whatever works for you. You can only achieve that if you continuously build capabilities and certain qualities in a field. Now, I hear you think, all of this sounds logical, but I don't want to wait for 20 years. I don't even want to wait for 5 years. My answer is you don't have to. You can start building career capital right away. You can start improving, start learning things which are really relevant for your job right away. There's no one who stops you. And the moment you do that, your stock, so to say, raises. And you can do a lot more at your job. I have a personal story to share in this respect, which is from my still rather early days in my career. I was a rather junior associate at a law firm, and I was involved in a quite large arbitration. The amount in dispute was around 250 million euros, not US, euros. And in this arbitration, the damages calculation was very complicated. So as is common in arbitral proceedings, when the damages calculation is complicated, we had forensic accountants who helped us with the calculation of damages. And when they sent us their first expert report, it was a very long report, dozens of different tabs on an Excel spreadsheet, an MS Excel file. And I clearly remember this episode still. It came at around 5:30, and I stayed in that office until very, very late. It took me so long to really go through everything. Before I went home, I sent an email to everyone on the team internally in the law firm saying, I believe the experts made a mistake. And I pointed out why, and I pointed out what would be the right way to calculate it. When I came back to the office the next day, still very tired, we had an internal meeting, and the lawyer in charge of this case was very, very skeptical, saying, you're a lawyer. Yes, I appreciate you have an MBA degree, but you're a lawyer. You don't really know better than the forensic accountants on how to calculate damages. And that was absolutely right. At the end of the day, I'm a lawyer who, yes, has an MBA degree and a strong interest in numbers, but I'm still a lawyer. It doesn't and didn't make me a forensic accountant, neither back then nor now, after a lot more years of working experience. So I still managed to convince the lawyer in charge to sit down with me, and I walked that lawyer through my calculations. And at the end of the story, so to say, the lawyer in charge sent an email to everyone on the team saying, apparently Harald was more precise than the forensic accountants. Now, this was very nice praise, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that because I could show to the partner how good I was at numbers and how willing I was to work really hard the same day or same night when we received the expert report, I was promoted, if you want to say so. I was put in charge of dealing with this expert, with this quantum expert. And at my level of experience back then, this is something which was very, very unusual. It would have usually been someone who had a lot more years of working experience, because the damages were extremely important, and fully understanding and working with the damages expert, with the quantum expert, was of extreme importance in that case. But because I had built career capital over the time, I had an MBA degree, I had always been interested in numbers, I invested a lot of time to get better at numbers, to fully understand MS Excel, and I went through the effort of going through everything the same night. My stock had risen in the company. So because I followed my own, so to say, advice I'm telling you here, build career capital, I could very much improve my own position. It later allowed me to say no to an assignment I really didn't want to take for various reasons. And I was asked more often on what tasks I wanted to work with than other people of the same level of seniority. If I had followed my passion, so to say, international arbitration as such, I would likely not have worked on improving my skills. I would likely have watched videos of the most famous arbitration practitioners pleading or sitting as arbitrators and dreaming what it would be like to be there one day. This is, I think, a very good example which shows you the difference in, on the one hand, following your passion, on the other hand, building career capital and becoming better. That's it with my advice. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write to me, and we look very much forward to having you back next week. Thank you and goodbye.